Okay, it is 2 p.m. We can call the March Historic Preservation Commission meeting to order. Good afternoon. Today is our March Historic Preservation Commission meeting. My name is John Milner, and I am the acting chair of today's Historic Preservation Commission meeting. We have a full agenda today, so if you're speaking today, please be concise with your points so we can get everyone out in a timely manner and get through all of our agenda items. Because I believe we have, at one point this meeting, we will not be at quorum, correct? 4 p.m.?
Yes, we anticipate a member needing to leave, so we're going to go as quick as we can.
Okay, that's 2 hours. We can do it. As a reminder, please limit individual conversations during the meeting. This ensures commission members and applicants can hear one another. Please remain quiet until you are called upon. When you do speak, please state your name and address for the record. Before the commission votes on each item, I will ask if any members of the public wish to speak. Anyone speaking will be given 3 minutes to relay information to the commission members. And again, we have a full agenda. If you are speaking, please be concise, please get to the point, and that goes for our fellow commission members as well today. If we must stop this meeting for any reason and we are unable to continue, all remaining items will be moved to the next regularly scheduled Historic Preservation Commission meeting. This meeting takes place on Wednesday, April 6th at 2 p.m. right here in City Council chambers. The agenda and documents for today's meeting are located on the PrimeGov website. If you're following along, select Agenda on the right side of the Historic Preservation Commission meeting to see the items being discussed. Written comments received more than 24 hours before today's meeting are posted online and were shared with commission members. At this point, new material may not be shared with the commission, so if you brought materials here with you, please keep them at your seat as we cannot accept or review them today. Debbie, will you please call roll?
And I'll just note that we have Desiree Golden as our new admin coordinator. Sorry, that's not on your script.
Nope.
So she's new to current planning and urban design and has been doing a great job the last couple of design review meetings. Go ahead, Desiree, sorry.
Commission Member Fudge, Commission Member Ryman Phillip, Commission Member Corbin, Commission Member Farzani,
Present.
Commission Member Jordan,
Present.
Commission Member Meacham, Commission Member Milner,
Present.
Commission Member Poor,
Present.
Commission Member Ramey.
Okay, thank you. Procedures for today's meeting are noted in the agenda. For the sake of time, I ask anyone who is unfamiliar with the process, please refer to the procedures section. There are 2 items we'd like to note specifically regarding the meeting process. These items involve certificates of appropriateness and appeals. With certificates of appropriateness, after an application is approved and the 10-day protest period has expired, the Historic Preservation Officer will mail the certificate of appropriateness to the applicant. City construction permits cannot be issued until the certificate of appropriateness is issued. Please contact HP staff for final design review inspection or to withdraw items that will not be completed. With appeal to Board of Adjustments, any person aggrieved by a decision granting or denying a certificate of appropriateness may appeal to the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustments. All appeals shall be made within 10 days of the commission decision by filing a written notice of appeal with the clerk of the Board of Adjustments. Is this going to be you instead of Angela? Okay. Katie, any news from the Office of Historic Preservation?
No news to report. A reminder of our commission committee training this Friday morning from 8 to 12 at the Convention Center. Everyone did a great job responding. Thank you. And then the other thing that I would note is that under 7A on the agenda, other business, we have the application for the CLG grant that we do annually. And I would ask that the commission move that up to our first action under public hearings to get that out of the way because there's a clock ticking for us to submit the application for funding. That's all.
Okay. Do we need to take a vote on that to move that up?
Yes. So if someone would be so kind as to make a motion to move item 7A under public hearings, and we could take action on that quickly.
I'll make a motion to move item 7A under public hearings.
Okay, it's motion by Commissioner Poore. We have a second.
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Corbin. Everybody else voting PrimeGov. Okay, everybody should be able to cast your votes. Get everybody?
Yep. It showed on the screen up there.
Oh,
No, I
motion
think
passes.
it's okay. It showed that it passes.
Motion passes, thank
Yep.
you.
We'll make sure that's accurate in the minutes.
Okay, next item, acceptance of minutes from our previous meeting, the February 2nd meeting. Do we have any questions or perhaps a motion to accept or modify?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from the February 2nd meeting.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Poore,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Jordan. Anybody else? Cast your votes in PrimeGov. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next up, item 4, anything from code enforcement?
Nothing specific to report. As always, if you have concerns or questions about the code enforcement report or issues you have observed, feel free to reach out to staff with those questions.
Okay, item 5, any continuance announcements or requests?
We have no continuance requests, and then just skipping down to 6, we have no dilapidated structures or National Register nominations to report either.
Okay,
And that's where we had moved item 7A.
okay, so next up, now we go to 7A, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
So just briefly, this is a grant that we receive, or we apply for, and typically receive annually from the State Historic Preservation Office. It's part of being what's called a Certified Local Government Program. Cities across the state that have established historic preservation commissions and ordinances are able to access funding to carry out things like National Register nominations, historic surveys, workshops, training for staff and for the commission. Projects this year that we've proposed include continuing some intensive level survey efforts in our Strong Neighborhood Initiatives neighborhoods to document those areas, and digitization of some of our records that are quite the opposite of digital at this time, and then funding for travel and training opportunities. So you don't have much in the way of a staff report, but what we would ask of you is a motion to recommend, let's see, what's the wording exactly here? A motion to recommend the grant application to City Council for approval and authorizing the chair to sign the application on behalf of the commission.
Okay, you're gonna have to repeat that.
Yeah.
So it's, if you look on page 7 of your, or let's see, if you'll scroll down on your agenda under other business, it's written out there. But recommend the CLG subgrant application to City Council and authorize the chair to sign the application on behalf of the commission.
okay.
I move to recommend the CLG subgrant application to City Council for approval and authorizing the Historic Preservation Chair to sign the application on behalf of the Commission.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay,
I'll second.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Farzana. Everybody else, please vote in PrimeGov. Did we get it?
I hit it twice, I think.
Oops. Can we redo that?
I think
There we go,
Desiree's
there we
able
go.
to, yep, she can fix it.
Okay, everybody voted, motion passes, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, now that takes us to the consent docket. I think we have 2 items on the consent docket here.
These are both items that were recommended for approval with no conditions, no unique circumstances by staff. The commission can ask that one of them be pulled for discussion, or you can make a motion to approve the consent docket.
I motion to approve the consent docket.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Farzana. Everybody else, please cast your votes in PrimeGov.
I'll wait this time.
Thank you. Oh, you can do it. You're good. You can click, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Items pass. If you are on the consent docket, congratulations, your project is approved. You have the option to stick around for the remainder of the meeting or head out. Okay, next up, I think we are on to items for individual consideration. I think we've got, let me see here, 12 of them today?
We have 11
We've
on
got
the
11
individual
cases.
consent.
Okay.
Um,
First up is number 1, HPCA-21-00180 at 401 Northwest 14th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills, Ward 7, consideration and possible action on application by Connie Scothorn, CLS and Associates LLC for Dan Morris. And I won't read through all the items. The commission has seen this previously. It is a swimming pool and outdoor landscape features at a corner property in Heritage Hills. The commission saw this at the previous meeting and requested that some revisions be made to the proposal. They have responded to quite a few of those comments, and staff has recommended approval. I'm double checking if we included any conditions on that approval, but they addressed concerns about the placement of the pool, provided more documentation and more detail on the site plan as had been requested by commission members. There's been quite a bit of discussion about the lot coverage, and they've gotten it to a minimal increase from what it is currently. So, yep, staff has recommended approval for all items as proposed. You do have comments from the neighborhood association regarding this property that are at your seats that were distributed on the horseshoe. And they may, so I believe the applicant's representative is present, and then there may be someone from the neighborhood that would also like to speak on this item. Yep.
Okay, if the applicant's present, you'd like to come speak, please do so.
And just in
Remember
the
that-
interest of time, if there's anything in particular that people want to call out and address, this would be the time to do it. But with the recommendation of approval, you may want to wait and see what questions the commission has or others have, just to move us along.
And please state your name and address.
Connie Scothorn, I live at 3401 Venice Boulevard.
Okay, thank you. You got 3 minutes.
I think we've done everything that we can do to get this approved. We've complied with everything that we've been asked for, and so I'll just answer any questions that you have.
I know that at last month's meeting, Commissioner Meacham and I both asked for a street level rendering of the property, and it doesn't seem as though that's been included. Do you? I could have easily missed it. It's a large submission.
Actually, I did submit it, and Angela said she didn't think that it was needed. It was very confusing because it just looks like a hedge in front of the fence.
Okay, so to elaborate on that, I won't take up a lot of time, but I do have big concerns about moving this forward as it stands, just with a lot of pushback from the neighborhood that I tend to value that pretty seriously. But can you clarify what you are planting? And I mean, it's going to be a lot of visibility in theory because, you're talking about looking through a transparent fence at turf in a backyard. So I just want to get clarification on the plantings.
Yeah, we were just gonna, the only thing that is certain is the barrier, which would be Nellie R. Stevens holly, which are evergreen, they're tall, they're green, they'll make a good barrier.
Okay. I personally don't feel comfortable approving it without without a street level rendering, but I am just one vote.
I think it would be helpful to maybe hear from the objection from the neighborhood, if they're here to speak.
Yeah, do any commissioners have any other questions for the applicant, well, she's up right now?
I mean, I have a million. I have no doubt that it's a nice project, but it is a property of serious historic significance in the neighborhood, and there are a lot of very valid points raised in the neighborhood's rebuttal. So yeah, maybe hearing from the neighborhood would be a good idea if they're present and interested in speaking.
Okay, well, if at the moment we don't have any other questions from commissioners for the applicant, if somebody from the neighborhood would like to come up and speak and say a few words?
I'm Randy Ice, 119 Northwest 19th Street, Oklahoma City, and I represent Heritage Hills Neighborhood Association, and I'm chair of the Design Review Committee. We gave you extensive comments on this. We're very concerned. There are several precedents that are not being followed. Last month, you turned down a project for going over 50% coverage. This is being appealed to the Board of Adjustment. You should have our letter supporting the HPC's action as it goes to the Board of Adjustment. This is also over 50%, and it's just 1 month later. I think you undermine your position if you don't go forward with this, or if you allow this to go forward. I also believe that the setback issue is a major issue in this case. The house next door is the Hales Mansion, the largest home in Oklahoma City for many decades, the former Bishop's Mansion. It faces Hudson. The reason the setback was set to 20 foot in the original plats was because of that. We believe this is a restrictive covenant that is enforceable by law. All right, not just by the HP Commission, because it sets the activities back, and this allows a fence within that 20-foot setback, which is very serious concern for the neighborhood. It changes the vista of this particular block, and that part of Hudson is probably the most significant part of Heritage Hills, okay, which is probably the most significant historic district in the city. For 100 years, the city has used that as a vista for representing historic preservation. This house was previously owned by one of the Coley brothers. The Coley brothers founded Heritage Hills. They also were the impetus behind the Heritage Hills or Historic Preservation Ordinance and this existence of this committee. So the people who founded the ordinance and this commission, okay, lived in one of these lived in this house and the house next door, the two Coley brothers. This house is incredibly important to our neighborhood, and it's incredibly important to our city. And we are doing everything we can to preserve the vista of this yard. Again, the house next door faces Hudson. So they're asking to put the fence up, okay, next to their backyard fence. It basically is next to the front yard of the house next door. So it's a difficult lot. That's why when the neighborhood was developed, that setback was established. And we believe that, again, can be enforced in court. Obviously, we don't want to go in that direction, and it would cost the neighborhood a tremendous amount of money if we had to go in that direction, money that we would much better used for beautification and other things. So that's our position. Do you have any questions?
Actually, no, I don't think I have any questions for you, but thank you. Okay. I appreciated the clarification and your all's response.
I just have a couple comments. Thank you, Mr. Ice. I also live in Heritage Hills and am familiar with both of these houses. And this house that we're talking about does face on 14th Street, and then of course the Hale Mansion does face 15th Street. But when you're looking at them, they don't look like the same property. And I also believe the one that's been discussed on the neighborhoods about I was on the commission when the one on Hudson was denied, but that was different because that one faces Hudson, and the pool would essentially have been in the side yard, whereas this one, the pool is in the backyard.
I would actually like to add a comment on that. Historically, that home that is referenced in this report did actually face 16th. It currently has a Hudson address. The original front door was on 16th, so it would actually be an extremely similar case.
I would think that it was similar to the one that we denied a few months ago for the same reason, because the fence on the side yard, they couldn't get it back behind the point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm struggling to get to a place where we can approve this just with the visibility, with all of the other things that we have turned down because of visibility. I'm really struggling to get there. Again, I have no doubt that this could be a really nice project with a lot of really wonderful elements, but it does offer a lot of visibility of, kind of resort elements like the pool and the outdoor kitchen and all of this. So I do agree that it seems to be a really inconsistent decision to move it forward. I'm not opposed to continuing to discuss it, but a project of this magnitude, if we're on a very short timeline here today, without the rendering that was requested by 2 commissioners, I'm just struggling to get there.
So I'd just like to say again, I did submit that, and I'm sorry if you didn't get it. I'd also like to say that the fence that we're adding on Hudson is going to terminate at the neighbor's fence, the fence that is to the house on the north. So that fence, that wall fence already exists, and it makes sense that you would terminate the new fence at the column that exists.
Is it the fence you're referencing? I mean, I'm very familiar with the property. I believe it's a painted concrete wall. Does that belong to 401 Northwest 14th, or does it belong to the Hale Mansion?
It belongs to the house to the north.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm on, Angela is out sick today, so I'm on PowerPoint duty and I was slacking. But this image shows the concrete fence wall that Connie's referencing. You can see it there at the north end of the property, and then looking back toward the looking toward the garage from Hudson.
Katie, I don't know if it's appropriate to ask questions of staff right now. Is there any clarification from staff as to why this project is being recommended for approval with such a large amount of visibility when other projects have been, recommended to be continued with honestly less visibility?
Well, they have proposed landscaping as screening, which is always challenging because we don't have a way to enforce that, but I think in many ways that's preferable to them proposing a large, brick fence wall or wood stockade fence, which would meet the guidelines for administrative approval depending on placement. I think we'd rather see something transparent like a wrought iron fence with landscape screening. So I think staff felt like in that way they were addressing the visibility. The commission has approved swimming pools on corner lots that were screened by fencing numerous times. I think it sounds like one of the main concerns with this is the location of the fencing in relation to the setback and in relation to the Hales Mansion. But we felt like the visibility was addressed with the screening that's proposed.
I would ask the same question about the lot coverage. What is the current lot coverage? It seems like in the past you usually include that in the staff
I believe it's
recommendation.
53%. It's in there. I think it's 53%.
Okay.
I believe at last month's meeting it was 56, and they've gotten it down to 53.
Okay, I missed that. Thank you.
I'm also a little concerned about the impeding the view of the pergola that's on the east side of the home on Hudson. I know that the previous owners spent years restoring that from what had been converted to a screened porch back to this pergola, and I do agree that it's a pretty significant part of the home. While I think this, they've gotten certainly some of their submissions well within the guidelines, kind of the overriding theme of whether this really affects the historic character of the home and of the area is, I'm still just not quite there.
I do have a question on the 12-inch wide concrete edging. Is that at ground level, or is
Yes.
there any sort of retaining wall?
It's at ground level.
And then regarding just the planting edge as the fence, my concern is it may look great for the next 5 years or while the current homeowners own it, but as soon as some of those trees die, and then I don't think there's any way to enforce keeping that barrier to screen these features that are the pool and the trampoline and such. So that's a concern of mine.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I personally love the idea of landscaping being used as a screen. I think that's generally really favorable in my opinion. But I share Commissioner Poor's, worry that in a few years it won't look the same, and we'll be looking at, a playground, which we would all love to have in our backyards, and I think that's great. I don't know if any sort of stone or other surface fence has been explored. I don't know if that's something staff would even approve in this case, but in my opinion, with everything that's being proposed in the backyard, I think it would be preferable to have something that provided permanent coverage versus temporary coverage.
Would that even be approved? I didn't think that would be approved. From everything I hear, they want it to be a transparent fence.
I think that's a question for staff. There's certainly a lot of them in Heritage Hills, and I don't know exactly where that falls within the guidelines for a home that's on a corner but technically has the address of 14th Street.
I mean, it's really in the homeowner's best interest to keep a screen alive. I mean, he doesn't want people watching them in the pool. Neither would I if I lived there. I mean, it's in his best interest to keep that greenery alive, and I don't know why you would think that he wouldn't. He certainly has spent a lot of time and money to get to this stage.
I don't think that he wouldn't keep it alive. That's not what I meant to imply at all. But things happen. We just had an ice storm a week ago. Things happen. I have a magnolia hedge in my backyard and lost 70% of them last October. It just happens.
But that's true, it does just happen, but we can't plan for disasters unless you're going to tell me today that we can put a brick wall up there, because I've always been told that was not going to be acceptable.
So the guidelines allow for masonry fence walls, they allow for solid wood fencing. On corner lots, the guidelines encourage some transparency. So we have always encouraged applicants with a corner property to find a way, maybe the whole thing doesn't have to be transparent, but to have at least portions of the fencing on a corner lot be transparent so that you aren't creating these canyons of solid, fencing material all up and down the streets. A more solid, portions of the fencing that are more solid would probably be acceptable. But again, I think staff felt like having something that did keep a more transparent feel to it, a less permanent feel to it, was in keeping with how open this property has always been. That it's such a large site, it hasn't been fenced historically, and that something like a wrought iron fence was a little more sensitive to that aspect of its character.
Yeah, I think a solid wall would be detrimental to the property to the north and creating a really hard barrier.
Yeah, it's a tricky lot. I don't think there's a very obvious solution, to be honest.
Do we have any other comments from commissioners? I mean, in the interest of time.
So
I'm afraid to
I would like to know, is the only problem the fence? Are there other concerns with the fence
I
and the
personally
hedge?
don't have a problem with this. I think it's a great project.
I wouldn't say it's specific to the fence. I just think visibility as a whole. I have children. I understand, the need for a fence for safety reasons and for privacy and this, that, and the other. But again, I do really value these comments from the neighborhood each month.
But we didn't see those comments, so I don't, except
Well,
for
the
what he just
homeowners
said.
typically would be given copies of those or notice of a meeting that this was going to be discussed. Typically, homeowners are invited to these neighborhood HP review discussions. So no, I wouldn't say I'm sure it's a beautiful fence and really well done. I just have concerns about the visibility of so many projects in the backyard.
So is it possible that we could work on a fence design that you would be happy with in the next month, but on the other hand, he could proceed with starting the work on everything else?
I think that's probably a question for Katie. I'm not sure what the procedure there is.
So there are elements of the project, I believe, that could be either approved today or that could be administratively approved. Certainly the gate and the patio, the work to the driveway and the curbs, removing the west driveway, installing the parking pad, the concrete patio, item 5. It sounds like the pool, the kitchen area. I think those are things that the commission would want to see back again. The work to the concrete stairs could likely be approved today or administratively approved. And the reason I'm saying that there are some that could be administratively approved, we kept everything together so that there would be one uniform certificate of appropriateness that captured all the items. In the event that as this went forward, there were more changes made, that way you don't have 3 different CAs with 3 different site plans. That's why we don't pluck them apart sometimes when it's a complicated project. So I think there are a number of things here that could be approved today if the commission's comfortable with them. It sounds like the pool, the trampoline, the outdoor kitchen area are things that where the concern has to do with the visibility, and that's going to be addressed perhaps by changes to the fencing. So I don't think you'd want to approve those without knowing what that solution is.
Yeah, I mean, as a homeowner or an applicant, I wouldn't want, even if we approved removal of the driveway or whatever, I certainly would not want to remove the driveway if I didn't know what I was going to be able to put back in its place.
Yeah, and have you had any communication with the Preservation Committee within Heritage Hills?
I
you guys-
haven't,
okay.
but I understand that Dan
Yeah.
Morris has.
Because just to know, I mean, this is the second time. There is a third time this item can appear before the commission. I mean, one thing to think of, is this something that maybe these 2 groups need to get together and have a conversation and see if they can arrive at some, item by item, go through this? Mr. Ice, I mean, is that, okay. I'm just trying to help get, I mean, it sounds like a great project to get done. We are sympathetic because we rely on the notes from the neighborhood. They're caretakers of the neighborhood. We're here to help facilitate that. And I don't know. I'm nervous to suggest that we piecemeal it,
Right.
and then we come back, and then I think that makes me more nervous than just saying if we could not
Yeah.
stall it out further, but
I
just
think-
if we could get them 2 to have a conversation and
I
just see if
agree.
there is some compromise to reach at to get the majority of the projects done that appeases both parties.
And I do think, like I said, I think there are several elements on here that are administratively approvable. So even if this was continued, we come to a solution on what's going to move forward to the commission. Then when we feel like we're in a good spot, we could administratively approve some of those items that aren't associated with the backyard work and get those going, perhaps, rather than the commission trying to figure out today on the horseshoe what they're comfortable approving and what they're not.
Yeah, and and this is certainly no fault of yours, but we are greatly diminished today. Up here, we are, just 5 of us here as opposed to the full commission. I don't dislike the project. There seems to be a lot of concern from other groups, and I just want to treat that appropriately.
So this is the third time, this is the 3rd month, I'm sorry, the 2nd month we just pulled, or the 1st month we just pulled the application. And we keep getting advice as what should be happening and what should be done. It seems ridiculous for me to come back again when I don't know exactly what you want.
So
I really thought we did exactly what you wanted.
Do you know if Dan has gone to the neighborhood historic preservation?
I don't know if
review
he's
meetings?
met with the committee. I know he's talked with his neighbors about the project.
Well, it's an open invitation to every person in Heritage or Mesta who submits for an HP, for a CA. I think that would be really valuable, because I think that as long as we're getting a lot of negative feedback from the neighborhood, I'm only one person, but it would be hard for me to buck that system when they always do such a thorough review and provide pretty high quality feedback. So I think him meeting with the neighborhood might provide a lot of insight as to how to appropriately move the project forward. I certainly understand your frustration in continuing to come back here, and
Well, and again, if now we leave, I don't even know what to do
So-
to change this plan to get it so that you'll approve it.
the sticking
that's-
points for me are how far the fence and the screen extend into the side yard, as well as the fact that it actually covers and includes what you mentioned earlier, the pergola on the side of the east side of the house, that kind of, which is to me is also a feature that kind of helps the property to the north, how it faces Hudson. That feature kind of correlates and has some activity towards Hudson. And so all of a sudden you're totally screening it and cutting that off from the street. So those are a couple items that are kind of a point of, concern for me. So maybe that gives you a little guidance, but I would 100% agree. I think a conversation needs to be had with the neighborhood and seeing if you can help alleviate some of their concerns and find a common ground.
Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
So if the applicant is amenable to a continuance, we can continue to either April 6th or to May 4th. And I will say, with Angela not here, because she'll scold me, we have kind of a quote-unquote long month from now till the April 6th meeting, so we could probably give you a little longer than our typical Tuesday cutoff for that turnaround on this one, because we've already so fully reviewed this. I think it's just going to be little tiny tweaks.
But
that would assume that you are going to have time to visit with the neighborhood
And
and
when
try
does-
and address those concerns.
when does this mean that you need to have this redrawn?
So it is March 2nd. Typically, we would ask for everything back by March 8th, Tuesday of next week. I think if we had things from you the 14th, that would give us plenty of time to review.
And this is what happened last month too, is that we didn't have time to meet with anyone. There was like less than a week to resubmit.
So the other option is to go to May 4th. I know that's getting into summer.
Well, he's already not going to have a pool,
Yes,
which was his goal.
yeah.
So I will leave it up to him as to which way he wants to go.
So if you're agreeable to that,
I'm not agreeable, but it's not up to me. It's up to,
is there a preference on which date we continue to?
I don't know.
I think we have to, do we have to motion?
We have
for-
to continue it to a specific date. We
If we-
can't just continue it indefinitely.
If we
so.
continue it to April 6th, but it turns out the Morrises would prefer to move it to May 4th, is that something that we can come back to or no?
Could we do the opposite and continue
Or
it
yeah,
to
could we
May
do the
4th? And if
opposite?
they get their items in time for the April 6th meeting, then
I believe we've done that before, but we've renoticed
We would have to renotice on that.
if it came back earlier.
Because you continued it to a particular date, so you couldn't then change that date. Because somebody might have decided, well, we don't have to worry about that, that's not for 2 more months. And then they miss the hearing because they're expecting May. But renoticing it is an option to consider, it's just not a preferred one.
how would renoticing process work?
How would it do what?
How would the renoticing process work?
It would
that
be
from-
exactly the same as an initial notice. It would just say, this item will be considered by the Historic Preservation Commission on this date at this time at City Hall, 3rd floor.
Typically, we only send a notice the first time an item's on the agenda. And then if it's continued, we don't send the notice again because that meeting and that continuance acts as the notice. But if we were going to hear it on a date that it wasn't continued to,
Right.
or like if we have a special meeting, if, let's say, we just did this with another committee, their meeting was canceled because of the snow and everything, and so they rescheduled a special meeting and they renoticed everything, even though it had been part of that canceled meeting. So that's how that works. We don't like to do it, like Rita said, it sets up the opportunity for someone to have, circled on their calendar the date that was going to come back to HP Commission, and then they miss it because maybe they weren't in the notice area, but it is an option.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to continue this item until May 4th. And that'll give you significant time to be able to work with the neighborhood, and hopefully you'll be able to come to an agreeable solution.
We have a motion by Commissioner Poore for continuance to the May, what was the date of that one? I'm sorry, May 4th?
May 4th.
May 4th HP Commission meeting. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, who seconded? Commissioner Jordan seconded. Other commissioners, please cast your votes in PrimeGov. Item passes. This item has been continued to the May 4th HP Commission meeting.
So
Mr. Ice?
can I still ask another question?
Sure.
I mean, we worked with staff, we got staff recommendation for approval, and now we're going to do it again. What's going to be different, except meeting with the neighborhood? Is that
Well,
the
I
only
think what
thing?
we're looking for is I understand staff approved it based on, but there's just, I mean, we've got a page here of just notes from the neighborhood. We would just like to see an item that's going to be built, that's potentially going to be forever in this neighborhood, have the opportunity to sit down with the neighborhood and just see if we can work out any of these items, you know, their concerns, and get through them. Because again, they're caretakers of that neighborhood. I think that's what we just want to get to that point. Was there any compromise on any of those items? And then see what that conclusion is, since both parties haven't actually met, and there were quite a few concerns. So I think that's what we're looking for up here. And Mr. Ice, can you get your contact information to Connie so you guys can get right on that? Yeah, right outside. Yeah, thank you. Okay, next item, item 2, HPCA-21-00196 at 216 Northwest 33rd Street. Katie, what can you tell us about this?
This is in Edgemere Park, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Jacob Wood, Modern Environment, for Cody Valentine for certificate of appropriateness to 1, demolish landscape beds, fire pit, patio, shed, and pathways; 2, elective construct back porch with privacy screen; elective 3, construct pergola; elective 4, install concrete patio with railing and walkways; elective 5, construct cedar deck and walkway; elective 6, install outdoor kitchen; elective 7, install fire pit; elective, and 8, install landscape lighting; elective. The Commission saw this application previously. We recommended continuance because of our common issue of lot coverage. The applicant, I believe, eliminated a feature. They eliminated the swimming pool from the proposal, so that got the lot coverage down under the kind of 50% threshold that we were aiming for. And staff has recommended approval of all items, no conditions recommended, as proposed.
Okay, is the applicant here, and would you wish to speak?
Cody Valentine, 216 Northwest 33rd. We kind of did the obvious and what appeared to be the only option after our conversations a month ago. So, you know, lot coverage was the big issue, and we worked with Angela about 1,000 emails back and forth on ways we could get that down and include a pool. It wasn't possible, so we have essentially scratched the pool from the project altogether.
We have commissioners that have any questions for the applicant?
I don't.
Okay, do we have anybody else that wishes to speak on this item? I think that's a no. Any discussion among commissioners on this project?
Oh, I just want to commend you for working with staff, and like, I know it's not always
Well,
a
poor
great feeling to
Angela.
sacrifice the things you want, but
I can only imagine how many emails she got from us. So this whole room, I feel sorry for her. But
Oh.
yeah, we tried it every way. It just wasn't going to work.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3 with the specific findings listed in the staff report.
I will second.
We've got a motion to approve by Commissioner Poore, seconded by Commissioner Jordan. All of the commissioners, please cast your votes. Okay, your item's been approved. Thank you.
Am I done?
You were good.
Thank you very much.
Free to go.
Okay, next item up, item 3, HPCA-21-00120 at 614 Northwest 26th Street. Uh-oh.
Sorry, Rita just caught, I think the motion on that previous one was made. We had recommendations to approve the items split out into a couple of different recommendations. So I believe the motion read off the first batch, but not all items. I think the intent was to approve all items. Is that correct?
That's correct. Then we don't have to go catch them.
That's correct. Okay. Do we need to amend the motion?
Yes,
Okay.
because you only approved
So
How
I'll
do
make
we
a-
amend the motion?
I amend the motion to approve.
Now you can just do a separate motion.
Okay.
To approve the remaining items and name them 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. If that is.
That's- I will make a separate motion to approve items 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 on HPCA 21-00196.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Poore.
I will second.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Jordan. All other commissioners, please cast your votes. Okay, items 4, 5, and 6 pass. Okay, thank you. Good now. And did we get them all? And 7 and 8, okay, thank you. Okay, now we're good for 3? Yes. Okay, next up, item 3, HPCA-21-00120 at 614 Northwest 26th Street. Katie, what can you tell us about this project?
This is in Paseo, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Fallon Brooks, Jolly Bird Home Design LLC for David Barthel for certificate of appropriateness to 6, revise the following approved items to include flipping the proposal to mirror previous approval, that's for a house, 1, construct 2-story garage elective, 3, install paving, we're not flipping the house, we're just flipping the garage, correct?
We're flipping the entire.
Okay, flipping the, okay.
Yeah, there was a
Making sure
lot of
that was-
confusion on that.
Yes. Install paving, number 4, remove fence elective, and 5, install fence elective. So the commission has seen this several times, and we are back to the originally proposed configuration of the house driveway on the east, accessed via the east side of the garage, and then fencing proposed on the west side of the property, which is fairly consistent with what was approved previously. It's just gone through several iterations of where they were going to place the garage, or how they were going to orient the garage and where they were going to place the driveway. So staff has recommended approval of this. We did hear from a neighbor with some concerns about the driveway of the neighboring property on the west. I don't know if anyone's here to speak on that item, but if the applicant had anything else to explain about the project, I think that pretty much sums up what's going on.
Okay, and the applicant is present.
Yes, Fallon Brooks, 1605 North Classen Boulevard. Pretty straightforward. We had originally the house approved, and there were some concerns about the footprint, and so we came back with a design justification and kind of showed that, even though it's a little bit over what the guidelines allowed, it was still within what is normal within the neighborhood. And I know a couple of the commissioners are new since all of that, so just kind of explaining what's happened up to this point. And then we made a compromise and decided to do a shared driveway with the neighbor. And then there was some back and forth with the neighbor and my client. They were unable to reach an agreement. So now we've decided to flip it back to utilize the existing apron that's on the east side, essentially just mirroring the entire plan and kind of going back to what we had originally planned to do. So.
Hey, commissioners, any questions for the applicant?
Katie, you mentioned I was unclear as to whether you meant there was opposition from a neighbor regarding the current submission or one of the previous submissions?
Staff received a call from the neighbor on the current submission regarding the shared driveway on the west side, and they indicated that someone associated with the property would be here to speak on the item. So I just wanted to make the commission aware of that, to call for anyone in the audience that wanted to speak before we just jump to
But no one
an
sent
approval.
anything in?
No, I don't believe we have a written comment on this one.
Okay, any other questions from commissioners for the applicant? Okay, do we have anybody else in the audience that wishes to speak on this item?
My name's David Barthel, and I would be the homeowner. So if you
And can you tell us your address? I'm sorry.
614
Oh, okay.
Northwest 26th Street.
Okay, great, thank you.
Is where we're building. Do you need my current address? No, okay.
No, that works, thank you.
So if you see, basically the issue that we ended up having is, do you see where on the west side, how the driveway, the entry there is much narrower than the actual paved driveway? So yeah, right there, that driveway's a little over 2 feet over onto my property. And that's where we kind of came into the issue of, we'll do a joint driveway. And I'd spoken to some people who own the quadplex, and I spoke to one agent there who basically gave me a verbal saying, you know, what basically we want to do is going to work for both of us. And essentially that ended up not working out, which is why we're now back to flipping this. But that driveway, you know, I still want to work with the people next door. Like, I'm not trying to, because they've overpoured a driveway onto my property. I still want to work with them and try and give them as much of a usable footprint as possible while still having room for my house and my AC units. And, you know, the thing there, I went over and I measured it, and the big bottlenecks are towards the front of the house. So like on this proposed plan, what I'm doing is I'm starting the fence further back to where it basically makes room for those places where it's a little bit narrower. It can even be kind of like their driveway can be over on the property. Their vehicles aren't going to have issues like hitting that brick chimney, because that's one of the narrowest points. And the other spot that's very narrow is that front column right there. But basically, those aren't going to be an issue because essentially where my fence starts, it shouldn't be, like vehicles aren't going to have that collision factor. So essentially, I think it could still work out. I mean, it's going to be obviously really tight, and I'm not going to have a 5-foot area to put an AC unit. It's going to be probably more like 4.5. But I think I can make it work. So that was what I wanted to do. And of course, you know, the other thing I mentioned is that this property I purchased from the people next door, which is why I wanted to work with them, you know, from the get-go on trying to get something going. But there's a few people involved, and you know, some people were telling me one thing, and then other people got involved, and then basically it completely flip-flopped as far as what they wanted to do. So, all right, that's all I want to say.
I'll just note that for the purposes of the HP Commission's review, the fence is proposed on the applicant's property, and it meets the guidelines for location of a fence. We know sometimes there are complications with driveways that used to be shared and now they're not shared, or you know, things where people thought the property line was here, but it's not, it's actually over there. But for the purposes of the commission's review, the fence meets the relevant guidelines and is within the applicant's property, so.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from commissioners about this item?
No, I'll make a motion if you all are ready. I move to approve HPCA 21-00120 with the specific findings referenced in the staff report.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Corbin. All other commissioners, please cast your votes.
Thank you.
Item 3 passes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hopefully y'all won't see me again.
Okay, item 4, HPCA-21-00160 at 627 Northwest 14th Street.
This is located in Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Susan Sandler for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct screened rear porch required. This is an item that they had initiated work prior to getting a CA, but did stop when they realized that that was required. And what they have proposed does meet relevant guidelines for an addition, for a screened porch, and so staff has recommended approval, no conditions associated.
Okay. Is the applicant present?
Yeah, I'm Susan Sandler, 627 Northwest 14th Street.
Okay. Go ahead. What would you like to tell us about this project?
I'm just here to answer any questions that you have. I don't have
great.
anything new.
Okay. Commissioners, do we have any questions?
To absolutely no one's surprise, I have a question. Just a very small one. Something, I'm not finding it right now, but I wrote it down. Somewhere in the staff report, I believe Angela referenced that the existing work appeared to be different than one of these submitted plans to do with the shape, because I think y'all are actually building something curved to mirror the front of the house. Is that correct?
Mirror the front.
Okay.
So we had fraudulent contractor issues.
Okay.
And so they put up that, there's like it looks like construction, like beginning of a roof. But our guy is going to take that down and just
Okay.
use the wood to make the curved
Okay.
design.
I just wanted to get clarification on that because otherwise I don't see any issues with the project.
Do you have any other questions from commissioners for the applicant? Okay, and it does appear we have some notes from the neighborhood. All the commissioners should have that. And I believe Mr. Ice is still out in the lobby talking, so
It appears that they provide support.
Is that something I should have,
do what?
the notes?
Then the neighborhood should be providing you with the, at least the opportunity to come to these review meetings. But they advocated for you, so.
Okay.
And
They concurred with the staff
typically
report.
staff will email that to the applicant when we receive the comments from the neighborhood. I'm going to have to find out if somehow those didn't go out, if we had incorrect email addresses. This packet went out in the midst of weather delays and complications last week. But yes, they were comments in support of your proposal.
Okay, cool.
I motion to approve HPCA 21-00160 with specific findings as referenced in the staff report.
Okay, we've got a motion for approval
I'll
by
second that.
Commissioner Jordan and seconded by Commissioner Poore. All of the commissioners, please cast your votes. Okay, item 4 is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 5, HPCA-21-00165 at 421 Northwest 16th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills, Ward 6. Consideration and possible action on application by Matthew Bell for certificate of appropriateness to, number 1, renovate existing addition, including window replacement and relocation, pedestrian door, siding replacement, construction of deck, and replace soffits at house and garage, elective. And staff did recommend approval of all items on this one as well. This is, again, I think some work that was already underway, and the applicant paused to pursue getting a certificate of appropriateness as was required. But all work as proposed appears to meet relevant guidelines. I believe you did have comments from the neighborhood on this one as well.
Okay, is the applicant present? I believe so. Okay. Is there anybody from the neighborhood that wishes to speak on this item? Or anybody in the audience? Oh.
Randy Ice, 119 Northwest 19th Street with Heritage Hills. And you've got our comments. We don't have any objection to the work that's being proposed. Our problem is this has been going on for 10 years. The house is gutted. It's been left standing open to the elements, to the transients. 10 years of debris in the yard, dumpsters in the yard. The neighbors have had it, okay? And if there's any way you can put a tight time limit on getting something done. I mean, 10 years? You know, that you look at the history of this property, it's just kind of ridiculous. And you've got to shut your house up and keep the doors closed and fill in, the back wall's missing. The inside is completely gutted, just with studs, okay? And been that way for years. And you can imagine if you live next door to something like that.
Thank you, Mr. Rice.
Is that anywhere with, I mean, I know that we have a timeline on start dates for construction relevant to the CA. Is there anything that falls under our authority for something like Mr. Ice is referencing?
So the CA is
Completion.
good for a year, and once that expires, they would have to come back for a new CA. It sounds like there are other issues going on that are not related to a certificate of approval process, but are more of a property maintenance, vacant and unsecured building, that type of thing that code enforcement handles separately from work that requires a certificate of appropriateness. So I'm happy to work with the neighborhood on coordinating that with code enforcement and see if there's something that they can do separate from whether or not there's a certificate of appropriateness in place.
Yeah, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I was understanding the concern to be that the CA would be granted and the work would be begun but not completed. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is around the corner for me. I certainly share all the concerns, but it does fit within the guidelines, and I don't see any reason not to motion to approve the project.
I actually do have a question, though. If you get a certificate of appropriateness to do the work and it expires at the end of the year, how many times can you continue to bring that before the commission? Is it just endless? So then if you reapply after it's expired, and then what if you go a whole nother year? Can you just stay in that cycle?
So if the property has made continuous progress toward the CA, then staff can issue a 6-month extension. After that 6 months, a 1-year extension would have to come back to the commission. And then after that extension, they're not allowed to get any additional extensions. They would have to come back with a new application, and the commission would have the opportunity to say, we're not going to approve this again. It's a tough position to be in, because certainly we don't want an incomplete project sitting with no one working on it, but it would give the commission an opportunity to have another discussion with the property owner.
Okay.
And can you clarify how that is reported and acted upon as it relates to this commission? Like if the work was, if we approved it and it's been 6 months, but nobody comes back, but the work's been stalled out, and say they start 8 months later.
Well, they have a year to complete the work.
Okay, so 14 months later.
Okay, so once that CA has expired, those are routed to a zoning inspector to go out and verify whether the work has been completed, whether it, according to the CA, and they can close it out. If work has been done but it's not in accordance with the CA, then they would issue a notice of violation, tell them that they need to come back and either correct the work or amend the certificate of appropriateness to match what they did. Or if there's, honestly, I'm not entirely sure how they would handle it if it was just a half-done project with no one working on it. But I think they have a number of different ways to pursue that. If it's, like I said, if it's unsecured, if it's a property maintenance issue. So
to respond to Mr. Ice's concern, that would be the conversation they need to have moving forward after the CA is granted.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I motion to approve HPCA 21-00165 with specific findings as noted in the staff report.
Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Farzana. All the other commissioners, please cast your votes. Stuck. Did everybody vote? There we go. Okay. Item is approved. Thank you. Okay, item 6, HPCA-22-00002 at 300 Northwest 17th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Jim Abernathy Construction for Philip Busey Jr. for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace staircase with new steel staircase elective, and 2, replace third floor windows elective. And that staircase is on a garage, just to be specific. The applicant did submit documentation of the condition of the windows, showing that they appeared to be damaged beyond repair, and that the proposed windows were a replication of the historic windows. And so staff has recommended approval of all items. I'll note on the stair that we don't have clear language in the guidelines one way or the other about things like a metal staircase on a accessory structure. We don't have language that says it's appropriate. We don't have language that says it's not appropriate. We felt that the design, other metal features that were present on the property, and the minimal visibility of where it would be installed were all appropriate and in keeping with the intent of the guidelines. So that's why that was recommended for approval.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Is the applicant present? Okay. Do we have anybody else present that wishes to speak on this item? Okay, I believe we've got notes from the neighborhood.
They concur with staff's recommendations.
Okay. Any comments from commissioners? Do we have a motion on this item?
I'll make a motion with HPCA 22000002 for items 1 and 2 with the specific findings and the staff report.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Poore. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Jordan. All other commissioners, please cast your votes. Okay. Item 6 is approved. Thank you. Okay, moving to item 7, HPCA-22-00006 at 500 Northwest 19th Street.
This is in Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Brad Edmonds, Jane and David Edmonds for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace garage door elective. This is an application to replace an existing garage door with a wood raised panel garage door. Staff did recommend continuance. We typically don't see the raised panel design on a historic garage door, but wanted the commission to evaluate if that was an appropriate option for this property.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay. Do we have anybody else present that wishes to speak on this item, item 7? Okay. It does appear we have one note from the neighborhood. All the commissioners should have that.
So I believe, so this is Mesta Park, and I believe the neighborhood just said that they concurred with all the staff recommendations.
Correct.
So,
Okay, is there any discussion among commissioners for this item?
I would just say with the recommended continuance in the agreement with the neighborhood and without the applicant present, I think we should move to continue it to the April 6th meeting.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we've got a motion to continue to the April 6th meeting by Commissioner Jordan, seconded by Commissioner Poore. All other commissioners, please cast your votes. Okay, item is continued to the April 6th Historic Preservation Commission meeting. Takes us to item 8, HPCA-22-00007 at 521 Northwest 41st Street.
this is in Crown Heights, Ward 2, consideration and possible action on application by Rachel Williams for Joseph Fleischiker for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace and expand rear dormer elective. And this is another one that, by staff's assessment, met all relevant guidelines for dormers and rear additions, and we've recommended approval with no conditions.
Okay, is the applicant present? Okay, please state your name and address.
Rachel Williams, 521 Northwest 41st.
Okay. And do you have any comments you'd like to share with the commission on this project?
No, I can just answer any questions.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions for the applicant? None?
Nope. I motion to approve HPCA 22-00007 with specific findings in the staff report.
I think I need to ask if there's
Yep.
anybody else.
Oh.
Is there anybody else present that wishes to speak on item 8?
Sorry, I'm trying
Nope,
to make sure
that's
you
okay.
all get heard before 4 o'clock.
Okay, no one else wishes to speak. Okay, continue. We've got a
I'll
motion to
second that
approve
motion.
by Commissioner Jordan and a second by Commissioner Poore. All other commissioners, please cast your votes. Okay, item 8 is approved. Thank you. Okay, next up, item 9, HPCA-22-00012 at 224 Northwest 18th Street.
This is in Heritage Hills, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Julie Hanson for certificate of appropriateness to 1, replace fence elective, 2, install pool, decking, and mechanical equipment elective, 3, excavate beside garage and install walkways, drainage, and artificial turf elective. Staff did recommend continuance for this application. The pool appears to be closer than, within 15 feet of the side property line. A typical side yard setback on a corner lot for a pool is 15 feet. We had this discussion on several applications previously. That side yard setback is not specified in the HP-based zoning, but it's standard across residential zoning districts. So we felt that needed to be called out and addressed, whether encroaching into that 15 feet was appropriate. There are also concerns about the calculation of the lot coverage and whether it was exceeding an appropriate threshold for built to open space.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant present?
Hi, I'm Julie Hanson. I live at 4401 Preserve Place in Edmond, but I'm the owner of the 224 Northwest 18th property.
Okay, thank you. What would you like to tell us about the project?
Okay, so, as we said, we're asking to just replace the old fencing. And one of the staff questions that I noticed or comments was that we did not denote how far the fencing that goes along Harvey is away from the sidewalk. It's currently at 18 inches, and I know that HPC guidelines are that it needs to be 24 inches. Other than that, we're just wanting to replace where it is with just a similar fence. Currently, the one we have along the Harvey is, you can tell it's pretty tall, it's 18 feet, and we would take it down to the recommended 6 feet. So do you want me to answer questions on the fencing or go through the whole project?
In the interest of time, Commissioners, what questions do you have for the applicant on this project? Concerns or questions or?
I just have a lot of confusion surrounding, it sounded like the staff had a lot of confusion surrounding like the right-of-way and where everything starts and ends. So if there's any clarity on that on the public right-of-way, and did you say that it's not owner occupied, you own the property, but you do not live there?
Right, we're doing a renovation on it.
Okay, got it.
So you can kind of see that in the pictures, all the junk in the backyard.
Yeah, if you can provide any clarity on the public right-of-way and how your property ended up, it's unusual. We haven't seen that one before since I've been here. How it ended up
Are you talking in
being
regards to
built
the
over.
fence or the pool? Because there were kind of discussions both ways.
I suppose both.
Okay.
I'm just confused about exactly where everything's going with relation to the public right-of-way and
Okay.
the property line.
So one thing I did want to point, and this may help, that I did see one of the comments on staff for moving to the pool is on the site plan I submitted. I actually have two. One is the whole pool, house, front yard, and then we did a second magnified one where you can actually read the dimensions. I wanted to make sure you were aware of that because there was a complaint that the dimensions were not legible, but they are on the revised site plan. So I think some of the questions, and I had discussed this in detail with Angela Yetter, the property line sets about 4 foot off of the fence. The pool is sited along that correct property line, so it's actually 5 foot off. It was actually, sorry, let me restate that. It was moved 5 foot off of the property line, so the pool is not sited on the property line. It sets per code guidelines 5 foot off of the property line. The actual water itself is 6 foot off the property line. A question I had, and I was kind of thinking about this as I was preparing for this, I had commented on this, that this was a side yard, but that's one of the questions I'd kind of like clarification from you because I look at the HPC definitions of what is a corner side yard, a rear side yard, and a side yard. To me, this seems like this is more of a backyard than a side yard because it's within our backyard. The area that we're discussing putting the fence into is just the open remaining yard that is just to the west of our garage. Our garage sits right in the middle of our property, so we have an open space on the east, which I can't utilize that for the pool because all of the gas lines, electric lines, and sewer goes through that. So it's not accessible for any type of digging. This west area on our west of our garage, that's the largest open area in the lot, and that's what I'm available with. So when Katie had commented that the 15-foot setback applied because of the side yard, I was questioning, is this truly a side yard because it's in my backyard? To me, the side yard would be the area facing forward between our front yard and our backyard that is along Harvey Parkway. That's a side yard that's not fenced.
So, yeah, the side yard is the area of the yard that is between the front wall of the house and the back wall of the house when we're talking about yard space. A side yard setback applies to the entire property line down the side of your property, from the front of the property to the back of the property. So the side yard setback is how far off the side property line everything has to be from one end of the property to the other. So the terminology is confusing, but we've had this come up a lot lately, not just in HP, but in some other areas with what's the side yard setback, so you have a rear yard setback that is off the rear property line, and that's how far you have to be off the rear when you build something. And then properties also typically have a side yard setback, that's how far you have to be off the side property lines. And that applies to the whole property, not just in the side yard, if that is clearer.
Well, I guess when you also referred me to, they called bulk standards that Oklahoma City uses, and then you go, it has this large table, and you look at each residential area where R1, and on the table it had, what were they, quote unquote, side yard setbacks, and then rear setbacks and things. I don't know if that's the same or different.
So that is the typical, how you would typically find bulk standards for a property. HP doesn't have bulk standards like that, but we kind of reference those for residential districts, R1, R2, to see what's typical. Now, the commission has the discretion to say, you know what, this has a really deep setback from the street and a really deep right-of-way. If you're 5 feet off the property line and not 15, we still think that's appropriate, and you're set back far enough from where you need to be. Or they could say you need to get closer to that 15-foot setback. It's not something that would require a variance the way it would if you were zoned R1. The commission has some discretion to evaluate that, but that's just what we use as a reference point for what a typical appropriate setback would be on a corner lot.
Okay. Yeah.
So is the fence line moving?
No. If we were able to put up a new fence, we would have to move it in another 6 inches to comply with HBC guidelines. It's currently at 18 inches off the sidewalk. It just needs to be at 24. Other than that, we're not moving it significantly, just for compliance. And the other fences are fine, so.
So you're moving it to comply with the guidelines?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd be fine leaving it in place, but we'll comply with the guidelines.
Okay, any other comments from commissioners? Questions?
Give me 1 second. I believe this was this recommended for continuance by staff?
Staff recommended approval of the excavation at the garage, installation of the walkways and drainage and turf, approval of the fence with conditions that they document the fence at least 2 feet off the sidewalk. And I mean, we don't really have to make this a condition, but just noting that it may require a revocable permit if it's over the property line. Although we see that frequently with wood fencing when they're going back in the historic location. And then we recommended continuance on the pool, decking, and mechanical equipment based on the issues that we've just discussed.
Thank you.
And I really didn't discuss the pool much other than the sight lines. Is there anything else you want me to discuss on the pool or give any clarification?
It seems that in the staff report, there's a lot of confusion about the percentage of lot coverage, and is that because of the confusion over the public right-of-way and where the...
May I say something, Katie?
Yes, go ahead.
So I talked with Angela. This was with all the snowstorms from last week. I had made a calculation error, which I corrected, and I believe she submitted that to you as well. And I accidentally crossed our property line to the fence line, so I retracted that. So I think some of that was based upon that. So she did, I believe she did get submitted in your packet, the recalculated kind of total property use. So I don't know if that helps. What I have calculated, and this may not be clear to you, but I also have information. Our back fence, our back property line, there's actually an encroachment from the neighbor's garage. that comes 3 feet over our property line. So we're required to give them a certain amount of space to access their garage. You know, we've talked with the neighbor, and we have made agreements on where that back fence will go based upon what is our property and what is the encroachment. So when we looked at our total property size, 123 square foot of that is not accessible to us because it's within that encroachment. So that's why that was subtracted out, and we came up with this 9852. And then for there, I subtracted out what was our built space to include the new pool and equipment pad, and then what we were left with front yard compared to backyard.
So I'm trying to do the math, but did you calculate the percentage of built to unbuilt space in all of that?
Math's not being my strong suit, but if I think I calculated it right, I think we are off a little bit. I think we're about 55-45. So if my math were correct, looking at our backyard in terms of what we have in it now, areas that I could give to try and get closer to that full 50%. On the pool plan on the north end where there are steps, there's supposed to be a paver stone patio that extends out to the drive. That would be something we feel like we could be willing to give up and just turn that into artificial turf. So it would be a clean but firm surface but completely permeable. So that would be one area. And that's not quite 100 square foot if you calculate the curve. And then another area, which I didn't discuss in great deal because it was already approved on another CA, but the kind of previous site of the decking patio could potentially, we can give some space on that as well too, to get us closer to that 50%.
I think I'm feeling a little confused. To be honest, I really thoroughly reviewed this and still felt really confused, but I think what I'm ultimately not understanding, even reading these specific findings, is exactly why staff did want to continue the pool aspect of this project. Is it just the lack of clarity in the math and the setbacks and the neighbor's encroachment?
I'm not sure if I understood the piece of the neighbor's encroachment. I think it was because we have, on previous cases, we have held rather firmly to the setback dimension issue, or that at least has been an important issue to discuss. So we wanted to raise that. We wanted the commission to consider that. And if that was something that needed to be addressed and revised, then this would need to be continued. And then I think just the open to built space in general is something that the pool impacts probably more than any of the other individual features as proposed.
And we're just missing information about the build to open ratio?
I think what we have is good now. It sounds
Okay.
like there might be some things that could be revised to bring that closer to a 50-50.
Okay. And one thing I noted is that the staff report uses the word typical a lot in regard to the setbacks, as opposed to, must be or is mandated to be so, or so on and so forth. So removing the setback issue, if it's not something that's set in stone, the issue is just the build to open.
Yes, I think
Okay.
so. I think if the commission, I think because that is something that has come up on previous cases and has been something that we've worked with applicants on, and we've not approved projects previously because of, in part because of the setback issue, staff would appreciate a finding that specifically states that in this case, it's appropriate to have that setback because whatever the commission feels. But if you don't take issue with the setback as proposed, then the only remaining issue would be addressing the lot coverage.
And the other setback, like the 5-foot property line setback, is that a typical as well, or is that a?
Yeah, nope, that's,
is that an is?
if you're in HP, then it's not a regulation. It's
Okay.
not something that would require a variance. It's just kind of.
So it's just mirroring the rest of the
Yeah.
R1 districts?
Yes.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification.
Yes.
The lot coverage has been addressed though, right? That's what you were saying.
Well, I think mathematics on the calculation of the lot coverage have been corrected. I think it's still not at or below 50% lot coverage as currently shown, but it sounds like the applicant was amenable to making some changes to reduce that a little bit, if the commission felt like that was necessary.
It seems as though there's still kind of a lot of confusion over the build ratio and the setbacks, and would you be, some of these things can certainly be approved today. Would you prefer that things are approved as a whole package, or are you interested in things being approved today that can be done so? And, staff has recommended a continuance on item 2 for the pool, but has recommended approval for items 1 and 3. Do you prefer to separate that out?
It really doesn't matter to me, because like I said, we're working on construction on this property, so we're really not ready for these projects yet anyway, so we've got time.
Okay.
It's just, the pool is probably the biggest question mark, just because it impacts when we put the drive back in, drive's been partially torn out. Ideally, they'd like to dig the pool before they put the drive back in. That's probably the biggest interplay.
Then I motion to continue case number 22-00012 to the April 6th meeting of the commission with findings that additional information is required from the applicant for item 2.
Are we continuing all items, 1, 2, and 3? I'm sorry.
The applicant indicated they didn't have a preference
Okay.
as to whether
If you'd
things
rather
were.
clear them off your docket, that's fine.
Okay.
The item 3 is really closely tied to the pool.
Okay.
So
And what meeting are we continuing this to? April or May?
April 6th.
April 6th? Okay.
Are you agreeable to that? The April 6th meeting, which means you'll have to have materials and new information by April 14th.
yeah, I can have
Did I say
that.
that
I
right?
don't
Did
know
I say that right?
I just don't know what information
March
I
14th.
need
March
to give you.
14th, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, what?
So I think the applicant needs to know, is the commission amenable to the location of the pool as proposed? Or do they need to look at trying to pull it further back off the side property line and reduce the lot coverage, or are we just concerned about the lot coverage so that they know how to go forward with making revisions?
I think that given the things that we have continued in the past couple of months, it would be inappropriate to approve this one without finite information on the lot coverage. Coming before the commission in relation to the setback, I don't personally have a problem with where the pool is, especially if a 15-foot setback, that's obviously a little bit different for this street side lot as opposed to the 5-foot. So I don't necessarily see a problem with that, especially with moving the fence to accommodate the HP guidelines. But I do think that we should, to cover our bases, make sure that we have finite information on the build to open ratio.
On that percentage, right? That's what you're saying,
And the
right?
fee, yeah, I mean, just the breakdown.
50% or below, yeah. Okay.
I don't know, I could be wrong. I personally feel like pretty confused about this case, so if somebody else has a stronger opinion than that, I'm open to learning more.
Yeah, I think one of the questions is, when they remove the fence to replace it, are we going to require that they meet the HP guidelines? Or are we okay with the fact that as long as they get a variance or the necessary revocable, I guess, not variance, they could put it back in the same spot?
I thought I had misunderstood, I must have misunderstood. I thought I understood you to say that you were moving it to where it was going to be 24 inches off.
She said she,
We're amenable to that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we can move it if that's what's required. I mean, I don't know if we're going to be using the same fence post anyway, so I don't know that it matters. So,
so then I think it comes down to the lot coverage and trying to better understand that.
Katie, does staff feel comfortable with the lot coverage as it's been presented today, the clarification that was provided today?
I think so. I mean, if the direction to the applicant is that it's approved with a condition that you provide a revised site plan that shows lot coverage not to exceed 50%, then I think that's something we can work with them on. And I think we've already discussed several appropriate possibilities for getting there.
And would we also need to note the condition of moving the fence back to the 24-inch mark?
Yeah, we would want the site plan to show the fence location revised as has been discussed.
Okay, I'll attempt this. I motion to approve HPCA 22-00012 with the condition that the fence placement is revised to meet HP guidelines and
An updated site plan?
and
Is that what we were wanting?
Yeah, and an updated site plan submitted documenting the revised lot coverage.
okay, with an updated site plan submitted addressing the revised lot coverage.
Okay.
We've got a motion to approve by Commissioner Jordan.
Is that a motion to approve all of the items with those conditions?
All of the
Yes.
items with those conditions, yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Farzana. All other commissioners, please cast your votes in PremGov.
So just to clarify, you just need an updated site plan to include moving the fence and then showing lot coverage.
Right, showing the
Okay.
lot coverage.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Right.
Closer to 50%. Okay.
And item is approved.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for being here. Okay, I think we're going to make it 2 more items. Not before. Okay, item 10, HPCA-22-00015 at 1525 Classen Drive.
This is in Heritage Hills, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Jeff Blake, Emerson Blake for Victoria Tracy for certificate of appropriateness to 1, construct wide dormer at rear to facilitate attic expansion, elective. 2, install skylight at south elevation, elective. And 3, replace windows at 3rd floor, elective. The commission has approved this proposed dormer like 17 times. We've done CAs for this numerous times. It's the same thing. I think they've expired or properties changed hands, that sort of thing. There's no change to that. There was a condition with the previous approval that additional documentation of the windows that are casements designed to look like double hung windows be submitted to staff to be included in the CA. So I believe that is recommended in the staff report. But the staff report did recommend approval for the dormer and for the skylight. The staff report recommends approval for or continuance for the replacement of the windows. After it went out, we had some discussion with the applicant. I think there was some confusion about which windows were being replaced, and the ones that are intended to be replaced, let me pull up the pictures, actually are not historic windows. And they are to be replaced with either wood or aluminum clad wood windows. But if the replacement windows meet the applicable guidelines and we're replacing non-historic windows, then staff would in fact support approval of that.
Okay, and the applicant is present.
Yes.
Okay,
I'm Jeff. Hi.
and what's your address?
Business or project?
Business, well.
Well, my business is.
Your address.
Your address,
My
yeah.
business, yeah, I'm 1020 Northwest 81st.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I think the biggest question is up there on the 3rd floor. They're pretty hard to see. It's hard to get great pictures, but those are single pane, no buttons, in or out or sandwich, just plain single pane glass aluminum windows, probably from the 80s, maybe early 90s. You can see just the thin amount of paint, the modern fasteners, the louvers aren't original. Those louvers were there, I believe, if you went in the attic with me, one of the windows is propped open. There's an attic fan, and I think it's to hide the attic fan. And so I think that's why those were put there after the windows were put in. They were put in from the front. And so we're just trying to bring it back to, we're going to build out the 3rd floor. We'd like to have windows that match the house. And would prefer those to be clad because we know they'll wear better. And I think I drew a proposed pattern of what those would look like. They're pretty high up. They're hard to see. I mean, it's almost hard to discern what they are there. I mean, you can tell they're single pane, but are they wood? Are they aluminum? It's pretty high up.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do we have any questions for the applicant?
I don't.
Okay, is there anybody else present that wishes to speak on this item? I think we've got notes from the neighborhood on this one. I believe, yes. Any discussion from commissioners on this item?
I'm assuming that the neighborhood comments were issued before the clarification on the windows was received, Katie?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would motion to approve HPCA 22-00015 with findings. And do I need to do?
So the thing that we do need to address, because we recommended continuance of the windows, is conditions. The condition that's recommended for the windows in the dormer, and I think the applicant's agreeable to that. Just further documentation of exactly how those are designed, so that it's a casement window, but it looks like a double hung, and then documentation of the new windows, because it was unclear what I'm not seeing. I'm seeing a cut sheet from Colby of a window with vertical divided light, but that doesn't appear to be consistent with the other windows on the house that are 6/1s. And then it says wood window with a handwritten note that it will be clad. And you can't do a true divided light window with an aluminum cladding on it. It would have to be simulated divided light. So just confirming the specifics of the window product to be used and verifying that those meet the guidelines.
So essentially, we need to approve it with the condition that the applicant will provide documentation to staff of existing windows and the proposed window materials.
Yes, but I think the applicant needs, unless you're good just going with a true divided light, non-clad wood window, which is what the guidelines would say you have to do, the applicant was hoping to get approval for a clad window that would be simulated divided light.
The mutton pattern of what I drew and dimensioned in the application can be attained with a clad simulated divided light window better than I can with an all wood window, if that helps the conversation. And so the whole house, 34, 36 windows on the second floor alone, has 5/8 inch muttons, really thin. And the wood window products that we find have thicker muttons. And so being high up, I would just ask we consider, looking at, it would be hard to discern it's a clad product, and the patterning would be spot on with the rest of the original wood windows if we could do a clad product. If the clad is unacceptable, then it'll just be a thicker bar that doesn't match the house as well, and I'll do a true divided light wood window. I'll leave it to you all to.
So I think we haven't had too many window replacements since a lot of you have joined the commission. The guidelines say that for a window replacing a window within the historic structure, windows have to be true divided light. So that means the muntin has to go all the way through the glass from front to back. It's supporting individual panes of glass. We have seen what we see when people go to a thermal pane insulated window is that the muntin, in order to function in a true divided light window, has to get much thicker than a historic muntin. Typically they're 1 1/8, 1 3/8 inches thick, which when you've got a 6 pane or 8 pane window, that's a big percentage of the window that is now muntin instead of glass. We know that for tax credit projects, for instance, the National Park Service is approving simulated divided light windows, particularly when they're not at the street level, because you actually get a much more accurate visual representation of the proportions of the historic windows, but it's not something that our guidelines currently support. The commission has approved, with unique circumstances, simulated divided light windows a couple of times, particularly when we had windows with very distinctive, very delicate muntin patterns, where going to that true divided light product was just not going to result in something that anybody wanted to see. So that's to lay out for you what you're being asked to contemplate.
I could have said it better.
So to approve this, it would be with the unique circumstances that essentially the clad was the better option in this case. Okay, I'll try this again. Okay, I motion to approve HPCA 22-00015 with the condition that the applicant will provide documentation to staff of the existing windows and with unique circumstances that in this case the clad is preferable to the true divided light.
Here we have a motion by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, seconded by Commissioner Poore. All other commissioners, please cast your vote in PrimeGov. Okay, item passes. Okay. Next item, item 11, HPCA-22-00017 at 500 Northwest 16th Street.
This is in Mesta Park, Ward 6, consideration and possible action on application by Holly Hunt, Sam Gresham Architecture for Darla O'Neill for certificate of appropriateness to 1, remove rear deck, elective, 2, construct an addition, elective, 3, construct porch at addition, elective, 4, replace wood fence with stucco fence, elective, 5, relocate mechanical equipment, elective, 6, replace driveways, elective, 7, replace fencing and retaining wall on west, elective, construct addition to garage, elective, 9, install fencing, elective, and 10, replace garage doors with single garage door, elective. Staff recommended continuance on this. Let me get the PowerPoint back up if it'll let me. The proposed addition overall was quite compatible with the historic structure. Staff was primarily concerned with the proportions of the roof and the overall height of it being out of character for the structure. It is on a corner lot, so that's going to be quite visible from the street. Other concerns were the height and placement of the fencing as proposed. The guidelines encourage keeping 2 single garage doors rather than going to a double width door. The commission has approved going to a double width door in the past at times, but typically when it's a garage that's facing a side street like this, the entry is fairly accessible for maneuvering. Staff has not been supportive of going to a single width door, although as I'm saying that, I don't remember if we did recommend. We recommend approval of that.
Yep.
So there you go.
It's way set back into the very back corner, so it's far off the street.
Okay, the applicant is
May
present.
I?
Yes, yes.
Okay, for the sake of brevity, I'm fine with tabling the stucco fence for now. We can just move that to the continuance column. Along with the items that the staff has recommended for approval, I would like to convince you all that this addition, like Katie said, is very compatible. In fact, it is the most compatible, as I read through the guidelines, for this house, and here's why. 750 is the max, and we have met that. Now, we did that in a 1-story because the guidelines prohibit 2-story additions on a corner lot, which this is. So in order to do the addition that's allowed, we went with a 1-story. And I really am not understanding the staff's comments about the proportions of the roof, since I matched the existing roof identically. For example, I would like you all to reference sheet A3.2 of my drawings, and I have it here. And in fact, I just realized that I had an error. So right here, as you can see, this white portion, that's the existing roof. I basically just took that, it's actually reduced in width, and put it on a 1-story building, okay? You can see here that they are actually quite similar, in fact, very similar in proportion. Likewise, along the side here, I matched the dormer exactly to the main house. And I wrote out the dimensions just so you would know for sure, identical. As well as we have this little jog for the porch, which is also seen in the main structure of that roof. So, and as well, in this southern, the south elevation, this dormer, it is actually up here on this portion too. I'm sorry I didn't get the side profile of that dormer on that elevation, so that could be part of the reason why that was confusing. So I just wanted to, the other issue that the commission had was the fact that we reduced the finished floor lower. All of these things were done as a way to get that addition as low as possible so it wasn't as visible from the street. It sounds like a 6-foot masonry fence is within the guidelines, so it's probably what we're going to administratively approve after this meeting with Katie and them. So I want you all to realize too that a good portion of this is going to be behind a fully non-transparent fence that the guidelines will allow at 6 feet, not 8 as proposed. But again, we've decided to table that one. So really, in compatibility, the staff, the guidelines, they talk about that additions must be compatible not only to the main structure, but also to adjacent buildings and streetscapes. So where I got my inspiration for this design was actually from the garage. So the garage structure is a 1-story structure that actually has a eave height of like 1.5 stories. That's not the case here, but we see a much taller roof. So from and it's in this package, from the finished floor to the eave of the garage, we're matching that on the main house. So these are ways that I'm trying to be compatible, and I think that that's a good way to do it. Also, it mentions that over and over again in the guidelines that an addition should be clearly discernible from the main structure. I think a 1-story addition on a 2-story house is a very easily discernible addition. So let's, again, for brevity, I'd like to just look at those, the 5 items on the specific findings for items 1, 2, and 5, the addition portion that we've been discussing. And the first 2 are supporting our project, saying that the proposed addition incorporates materials and architectural details that are consistent with the historic structure, and that the proposed addition meets relevant guidelines for size, width, height, and depth. Okay? So the next ones, the proposed addition incorporates forms that are not consistent with the historic structure, including the roof form. I think I've shown you that's not the case. Again, I pulled all these elements identical from the house. Again, this roof, it's the same roof, it's just reduced to a 1-story. Matching the dormers identically helps us, as the guidelines say, to incorporate historic existing elements into the new design to increase compatibility. So again, I've done that. The only other items, so back to the specific findings. So I would say that that's not true. It's simply not true that we aren't consistent with the historic structure or the roof form. Furthermore, the final item, number 5, about the windows and doors. You guys know I do this all the time. I can totally work with staff with a condition to say that we can provide. I've provided quite a bit, but there must be something that they're not absolutely certain on. So we can work with that and work with them on window and detail items. So that leaves the final, number 4, that the proposed addition is the lower finished floor. So that's the one I wanted to discuss with you about that garage. That came from on the same property. So again, I'm trying to pull as a secondary structure, making this addition seem secondary. It made sense to me to match the streetscape, some of the adjacent buildings on the property, that being the garage. So that's the reason for the a little bit taller from the grade to the eave. But again, when you go to look at this from a side profile, the eave hits right at the floor joist of the existing structure. See that? So that continuance there actually in proportion matches the existing floors. So we've got first floor and second floor, and that roof hits right at that floor joist. So again, I feel like this is the absolute most compatible addition you could put on this house. I feel like, there's nothing in these specific findings that says you cannot, it does not meet a guideline. In fact, the guidelines support this addition. I think that we could definitely approve the items that the staff has recommended approval for, but I hope you'll find that this addition is also compatible with the guidelines.
Okay. Commissioners, what questions do we have for the applicant?
Katie, can you speak to why staff said that the roof was not compatible or did
So-
not meet the guidelines?
That might have been a poor choice of words. Our concern is that so the house, when you look at the house is almost 35 feet tall. The house is what I would consider a 2.5-story house. That's an attic that, I don't know if that's usable, built out space, or if it's just attic space, but it's significant dormers on 3 sides. So,
Just
is
on
there
the
not one
sides. It's not on the rear.
It's not on all 3 sides?
No.
Okay. I'm looking at 2. I was thinking there was one on the other side over there.
There's
not one
2,
over-
just like on the main house. The main house has 2 dormers, so I put 2 on the addition.
Okay, there's some on this. Okay. So anyway, we're looking at an existing structure that is very tall. We're looking at a 1-story addition that is the height of a lot of existing 2-story houses. It's 26 feet 5 inches tall, with, again, replicating that roof that is over what is essentially a half story. And I know that's going to be attic space, it's going to be storage, it's not going to be finished space, but it just adds to the mass of the addition so that it doesn't have the height that it would have if it was just a plain 1-story with a typical 1-story roof. So the proportions of that were part of staff's concern, just the mass of the roof with the dormers. Holly, let me just say one more thing I'll go through, and then the piece about the finished floor height. You're looking at a really good example is this, where did it go? This image. So a couple of things. On the historic house, the siding stops here, and you have a brick stem wall that goes the rest of the way to the ground. And when you look at the front, your porch columns start on top of that stem wall. So the porch columns have a certain proportion. When you look at the proposed addition, the porch columns have the top of the porch column is the same height as this. The base of the porch column is all the way at the ground. So it has a very different proportion than the historic columns, which emphasizes how much taller the addition is from floor to ceiling than the historic house. It just is a different proportion. I mean, that's the right word for it. So staff had no issue with the finished floor height being lower. We see people do that with additions all the time. I think it is actually a really nice way to differentiate. Staff's thought was that stopping the siding higher up and not having it come all the way to grade would break up that height and not have it look as tall as it is. And then if you could similarly somehow visually raise the base of the porch columns so that they don't look so tall and skinny in comparison to the historic porch columns, that would help with the proportion. So that's a visual design thing. The roof massing is more about the actual, layout and floor plan of the addition.
Does the height on this roof make this an issue of not being able to do a 2-story addition on a corner lot?
So it's not a 2-story, and we've seen additions before where they use the attic space to get some extra, whether it's storage, whether it's an office, whatever, to kind of hide a little extra usable square footage in the attic, and we haven't considered that to be 2 stories.
Okay.
It was more of just the massing.
If I may. So the height difference is about 10 feet. Well, that's about a floor, right? So we're just, the whole roof, it isn't any bigger or more massive because the roof pitch is the same. So we just took out the second floor, right? And the roof sits down now on the walls. So there's no way to reduce that massing without, well, there is, that's what it would be no matter what. This is a typical 1-story addition. It just has dormers in the roof. That's maybe why it looks bigger. I'm not sure. But again, I just want you to see those proportions. That triangle and that triangle, this triangle is actually larger. So the proportion is actually reduced at the addition, but we have to match the roof pitch in order to be compatible. So that is given by, where the walls are. So where the main story is a little wider, it hits its ridge up here. We're lower and pulled in. We're still going to have a ridge that is the same overall height, right? From the ceiling to the ridge, ceiling to ridge is the same because the pitch is the same. So there's no way that is ever going to be different. That is the way that it is built. And then, Katie, or staff, commissioners, if it would help, I will totally do a tall stem wall and match it all the way around. You won't see any of that from the street, from the public. I mean, we'll have a fully non-transparent
Well,
fence.
that's assuming we pass the stucco fence, though.
But even if we had a 6-foot wood fence, we don't even need a CA for it.
Is a stucco fence administratively approved in Mesta Park?
It's 6 foot.
I've seen like maybe 2 of them in
The
Mesta.
guidelines do allow for, I actually don't know, it allows for a variety of masonry
I
materials
knew that they
for
were in
fencing.
Heritage Hills, but I didn't know, Heritage Hills has a few rules that
I
are
think that the problem is
non-specific.
that it's 8 feet. So if we
Okay.
reduce it to 6, I think we could get it administratively approved. That's what I read in the staff report.
Yes, I mean, staff has the ability to forward anything onto the commission that staff has concerns about. There's not stucco on the house, so I think that would be my reluctance as well, and I don't know that we even brought that
And
up in
we're
the
going to
staff
table
report.
that. But even assuming a 6-foot wood fence,
Yeah.
it would cover 6 feet at the bottom of this thing. So you wouldn't see that. But again, I'm totally fine with faking it, putting a high stem wall around this addition. If that is something the commission feels like would be really necessary, again, just to put that in perspective, that means that line would just continue on. I could even, here's this, what if we just take a piece, a freeze board is what it would be called, and run it along there just to continue that line? That would be a way we could.
What does that do to the porch?
It wouldn't
To the
change
floor, to address the column
the
concern?
columns. Well, you
'Cause
see
I think
the
that's a
two
nice
different.
idea.
I would disagree that they're different because actually these columns are larger. See, do y'all see those elevations? The columns are the same height. Okay, the difference is the finished floor. Okay?
Yeah, it's just so atypical to see columns at ground level in a historic district.
Right, but again, we're discernibly different than the main structure, and in the backyard, completely invisible. If you remember this porch that we're proposing, it's like on the interior corner of the home, so not on the street sides, it's on the interior. So there is very minimal visibility, if any at all, of the porch.
So I'm going to jump in here and say, I think we lose quorum in 2 minutes.
Yes.
So
Can we please move to
wanna try to
approve with
get
conditions
something
that will bring windows?
motioned and set up for her, so I guess we're just going to need to take the pulse on how we feel about approval of all items, if we need to continue the items that staff suggested continue and just approve the ones that,
Well, I think we have really good feedback on what needs to happen for it to get approved. Do we all have a consensus on that, as far as addressing the sidewall?
yes.
So,
And that's
Katie,
just
is that an
speaking for me,
instance
but-
where it would be continued and resubmitted, or?
With a condition.
I mean, I'm not trying to like be hard on you, Holly, but I feel like there have been several different scenarios suggested.
Okay.
And I think without the commission seeing what that looks like, especially when we're talking about proportions and where we're suggesting a finished floor height is and that sort of thing, I personally feel like that's something that the commission needs to see again.
So
Okay.
none of you feel like you could approve this as I've shown it today, based on the conversations we've had today?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
None of you feel like you can approve this addition? That
I feel like you're
after
so
we've had-
close. I truly feel like you're
But
very
I have
close.
to wait a month, y'all.
It is what it is.
You know,
I know.
I think it's the same thing, though. It's like, it's 30 days to approve something that is going to stand
Yes.
for years.
And we all have to do
And
it.
we get it. We just need to make, because I know in the 2 years I've been on commission,
Guys.
we've paused a lot of items to get the details and the correct drawings back. So
I'm literally going to add like 2 lines on this and bring it back. I mean, can we move with a condition that we match the finished floor trim? Is that something, because that's what we're
I
talking
mean,
about.
I think that's essentially what I asked of Katie, and she feels that staff needs to review the project again, if I'm understanding correctly.
I mean, I'm not entirely convinced that what has been discussed is the whole solution.
Okay.
If the commission feels like that's all that needs to be done, is that we're going to put a piece of trim where the finished floor is, and then we're good, then the commission can certainly approve it with the condition that that comes to staff as a revision. Staff's comfort level with that as fixing all of the issues that were raised about the proportion of the addition I feel like there are some other options that might be more effective. But if the commission's comfortable with that, and it's on the rear, you're not going to see it behind a fence, then you all can certainly approve it with the condition that that just be submitted to staff.
I think that if staff thinks they need to see it again, then they need to see it again. But if anybody feels differently, motion on.
Although there are items in here that, do we need to break this one up? Are there items that are going to be continued and then items that are going to be approved?
I think
Because some items that the staff didn't have any problem with.
Correct. I think that's a question for Holly as to whether you would prefer that we go ahead and approve items 8 and 10, which nobody's
And
even.
1 and 2 and 5.
Nice try.
on,
I think,
guys.
that's a question for you as to whether you'd prefer to be able to get started. I mean,
I think
it's
I
not
think
for
it's
nothing
numbers.
to construct a garage.
I think it's number 6, 8, and 10 that, the
Where's
staff
number
was.
Because I brought a really
6, yes,
compatible
I'm sorry.
design. That's why they recommend approval.
Well, we really are going to lose quorum any second, so you better give us your preference as to whether you want 2 CAs.
Approve
or
what
one.
you can, please.
Okay.
And
I
bring
motion.
something good news to my
I
client.
motion to approve items 6, 8, and 10 of HBCA 22-00017 with specific findings as referenced in the staff report.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Jordan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Farzana. All other commissioners, please cast your votes. PrimeGov. Okay, items 6, 8, and 10 pass.
Katie, I should have asked this. Is there a reason removing the rear deck is, y'all are stating that it needs to be continued? Or is that just the applicant's request to be treated as part of the addition?
I think we just itemized the
Okay.
components of the application and grouped that with the addition. There were no objections to removing the rear deck.
Holly, do you have input on whether that's with? I mean, does anybody have an
Please,
opposition
approve
to
whatever you
removing
can.
this non-historic deck? Okay, I motion to approve item 1 of HPCA 22-00017.
Okay, we've got a motion to approve item 1. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Farzana. All other commissioners, please cast your vote in PrimeGov.
Do y'all have the ability to vote?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you not?
No.
We can do a verbal vote
Okay.
for Commissioner Jordan.
I've actually switched it back and forth, so.
Just make sure you're on computer view. Are you on the live meeting tab?
Yes, yes.
Can we just do a roll call?
Yeah.
Vote for
Just-
Commissioner Jordan?
Commissioner Jordan, how do you vote?
Yay.
Okay. Okay. Item 1 passes.
Okay.
Now we've got items 2, 3, 4, 5, and 7, and 9.
2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9?
Yes.
Okay, I motion to continue items 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, and 9 of HPCA 22-00017 with the specific findings that more information is more, what's the best way to phrase this? That the proposal does not meet current guidelines and more information is needed.
Okay, and what meeting are we continuing this to? Holly, do you want to do April? Or, okay, April.
To move to April 6th.
Okay. Okay, we've got a motion by Commissioner Jordan for continuance. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Farzana. All other commissioners, please cast your vote in PrimeGov. Motion passes. The item has been, items 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9 have been continued to the April HP Commission meeting. Okay, that gets us through items for individual consideration. Next up is other business, but we moved this to the beginning of the meeting. Communications and reports.
We did not report out any administrative approvals. That was kind of a technical difficulty there. They'll be on your next month's meeting, and those are posted online every week if you're ever curious about what's getting administratively approved.
Withdrawals?
One withdrawal, nothing significant to note on that item. No administrative closings to note, nothing from City Council. We have 2 items that are being appealed to Board of Adjustment. The Commission doesn't take any action on that. Staff typically attends those hearings in case the Board of Adjustment has any questions about the Commission meeting or about the staff report, that sort of thing. They do watch a recording of the meeting, and they get copies of the staff report. I think this is the first time we've had any appeals since most of you have been on the Commission, and we'll let you know the outcome of those discussions. Nothing to note from Planning Commission.
Municipal Councilor? Okay. Next meeting date, the next regular scheduled meeting for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, March 2nd at 2 p.m. and at the Municipal Building, City Council Chamber. New applications for this meeting were received February 1st, 2022. New information on projects continued from today's meeting to the upcoming meeting must be submitted to staff by 4 p.m. Tuesday, February 8th, 2022. Oh,
I just realized that was not
yep.
updated for this month.
Yep.
That's last month's meeting
That's
date.
March.
So the next meeting is the 6th. The deadline was yesterday.
it's okay. The next regular scheduled workshop for the Historic Preservation Commission is Wednesday, March 9th. Is that still correct?
So I was going to informally poll. We have Commission Committee training on Friday the 4th. I thought you all might not necessarily want a workshop 5 days after that. We can poll for another date and postpone that until maybe after spring break.
So I take all that back. That's going to be postponed. Any items from commissioners? Okay, do we have citizens to be heard? Yeah.
I was asked to come today for 608 Northwest 19th by Angela Yetter.
Oh, that item was on the consent docket and was approved. So
We're good to go?
yeah,
You're good to
you're all
go.
good to go. You'll
Yeah.
get a copy of your
shall it come up
approval
here, too?
from staff.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, next up, adjourn. Are we adjourned? Can I adjourn it?
There you go. We're adjourned.
4:08? We do it?
Yep. Nice job.